Have you ever been so hot, I mean, just so fundamentally oppressively overheated that you genuinely considered, like, paddling a small boat to Iceland?
Oh, wow, just straight to the Arctic.
Right, just grabbing an oar, pointing yourself vaguely north, and hoping the currents just take mercy on you?
I feel like we've all had those moments in a heat wave.
Exactly. Or, and be honest with yourself here, have you ever been in a room so stiflingly warm that you actually opened a literal unlit kitchen oven, just in this desperate hope that the residual air inside it might somehow, cool down the rest of the kitchen?
It sounds like the logic of an absolute fever dream when you lay it out like that.
It really does.
But when human beings are subjected to extreme thermal stress, our higher reasoning tends to just melt right alongside our ice cubes.
Yeah, it's a goblin.
We start looking at unlit appliances as like viable climate control strategy.
Well, that fever dream logic is actually our entire mission for today's deep dive, so welcome.
I am very ready for this one.
We are unpacking a first-hand survival diary, documenting what the authors call Canal Boat Chaos.
Such a great title.
It really is. It chronicles this couple, Mandy and Raymond, and their dog, Prince, who are just trying to survive a brutal 35 degrees Celsius heat wave.
Which is incredibly hot for that region.
Right, and for those of you listening who operate in Fahrenheit, that is a deeply unpleasant 95 degrees.
Very unpleasant.
But the kicker here, the thing that makes this so wild, is the environment. They aren't enduring this in, like, a suburban house with central air.
No, definitely not.
They are living through it on a narrowboat on a canal in Britain.
Which presents a highly specific and, frankly, adversarial set of physics.
Adversarial is the perfect word.
Because, I mean, a 35-degree day is uncomfortable anywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
But a 35-degree day inside a metal tube floating on stagnant water with virtually no cross-ventilation.
Sounds like an actual nightmare.
It really shifts the situation from a weather event into a full-on thermodynamic endurance test.
And it creates this incredible friction between the romanticized dream of alternative living and the sweaty, insect-filled, sun-baked reality of it all.
Which they document with so much wit.
They really do. We are going to unpack the survival humor in this diary, looking at the breakdown of domestic tranquility and just the sheer absurdity of trying to maintain, British stoicism when your living room is actively cooking you.
To really understand the comedy of their situation, we have to first look at the baseline expectation they were operating from.
Right, the dream they bought into.
Exactly. The source material outlines this beautifully, because when people hear canal boat living, there is this immediate pastoral fantasy that gets triggered in the brain.
Oh, totally. You picture these, like, glorious sunsets.
Yes, exactly.
You picture charming little ducks gliding past your window while you're, I don't know, sipping artisan coffee on the deck wrapped in a thick, hand-knit cardigan.
It's very much the Instagram versus reality of #van life, but, on the water.
Yeah, van life but wetter.
Right. People see those curated photos and they think, well, I want to escape the rat race. I want to live in a floating shoebox completely surrounded by nature.
And who wouldn't? It sounds idyllic.
It taps into a very real modern desire for a deliberate, slower pace of life. But the problem is that the vehicles for this lifestyle, British narrowboats, they were never designed for a modern climate, let alone a historic heat wave.
They're pretty old historically, aren't they?
Very old. If you look at their history, these boats trace their lineage right back to the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, wow.
They were designed to haul coal and heavy goods along these narrow, shallow canals.
So they weren't exactly built for luxury lounging.
Not at all. They are essentially industrial barges that we've just sort of retrofitted with beds and kitchens.
Which perfectly explains why Mandy wastes zero time shattering that pastoral illusion in her diary.
She gets right to it.
She does. In the very beginning, she describes the boat as having transformed into a floating tin oven.
A very accurate description.
Right. And Raymond, her partner, calls it an easy bake oven.
Which implies they are the ones being baked.
Literally. And my personal favorite, they describe the internal temperature of the boat as being somewhere between the Sahara and Satan's conservatory.
That phrase, Satan's conservatory, it just captures the physics of the problem perfectly.
It really does paint a picture.
Yeah.
But walk me through the physics, because why does it get that hot? Is it just the metal?
Let's look at the mechanics of it, yeah. So a traditional narrowboat has a steel hull and a steel cabin.
Okay.
And steel is just an exceptional conductor of heat.
Right, of course.
So when you paint that steel, and they're often painted in traditional darker colors like greens or reds, it becomes a massive thermal sponge for solar radiation.
So they aren't just in a small room. They are literally living inside a giant, human-sized radiator.
Exactly. You're inside the radiator. But it's actually worse than a standard radiator because of the environment they're in.
How could it be worse?
Well, the boat is sitting on canal water, and water has a high albedo effect.
Albedo effect, what's that?
Basically, it means it reflects a significant portion of the sun's ultraviolet rays right back up.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Right. So the boat's roof is absorbing direct solar radiation from above, and the hull is being constantly baked by reflected radiation from below.
It's getting hit from all sides.
Exactly. The steel absorbs all this energy, transfers it inside, and because narrowboats have these very low ceilings and quite small windows, the heat literally has nowhere to go.
It's a double-sided broiler.
A broiler is the perfect analogy.
I mean, I think that completely reframes the whole tiny home movement for me.
In what way?
Well, when your home is a metal tube sitting in direct sunlight, and you physically cannot escape it because it's your primary residence, the psychological pressure must just be immense.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like, you can't just call a landlord to fix the AC. You bought the boat. You are the captain of the oven.
And that lack of an external scapegoat is really vital to understanding their reaction to this whole ordeal.
Because they have no one to blame but themselves?
Precisely. When you have no physical escape and nobody to blame but yourself, you essentially have to create a psychological escape valve.
And for Mandy and Raymond, that valve is clearly humor.
Yes. Reading through their dialogue, sarcasm is absolutely their first and only line of defense.
They really lean into it.
They are using hyperbole to reclaim like a tiny bit of narrative power over a physical environment that is completely dominating them.
Right, because if you can make a joke about the temperature of Satan's conservatory, you aren't just a passive victim of the weather anymore.
Exactly. You become a commentator on it. You distance yourself from the trauma.
You take control of the story.
Yeah.
But, that psychological shield only works for the humans.
Right. The pets don't understand sarcasm.
They really don't. And the diary very quickly shifts to the physical toll this heat is taking, starting with the most innocent casualty in this entire ordeal.
Prince the dog.
Yes, Prince. The breakdown of canine dignity is a major theme here.
It really is a complete and total surrender.
Mandy notes that the constant background noise on the boat is no longer like the romantic sound of water lapping against the hull.
Or Raymond wrestling with a heavy canal lock.
Right. It is just Prince panting. Endless panting.
Poor guy.
She says he is questioning every life decision that's brought him onto a floating tin oven.
I mean, you can't blame him.
Not at all. And he has abandoned all pretense of being a good, alert boy.
He's off duty.
Completely. She writes that he is sleeping upside down, legs completely splayed, looking, quote, like he'd been arrested.
That is such a highly evocative image, and it actually tells us a lot about the biology of dogs and how they manage thermal stress.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that.
Well, humans are incredibly efficient sweaters.
I mean, I definitely am in a heat wave.
Right. We have millions of acrine glands across our bodies that allow for evaporative cooling. That's our primary defense.
We sweat, the sweat evaporates, we cool down.
Exactly. But dogs do not have that luxury. Their sweat glands are largely confined to their paw pads.
Which really doesn't do much when you're trapped on a hot metal boat.
Not at all. So they rely almost entirely on panting.
To cool down.
Yes. Panting rapidly moves air across the moist tissues of their mouth and lungs to facilitate that same evaporation.
Right, that makes sense.
But here's the problem. When the ambient air temperature matches or exceeds their core body temperature, panting suffers severe diminishing returns.
Because the air they're breathing in is already hot.
Exactly. You are just circulating hot air. It doesn't cool you down anymore.
So what do they do when panting stops working?
At that point, a dog instinctively shifts to its secondary survival tactic, which is conduction.
Conduction. Like transferring heat into something else.
You got it. They seek out the coolest possible physical surface they can find, and they maximize their surface area contact to transfer their body heat into the floor.
Hence sleeping upside down with the legs completely splayed out.
Right. They are literally trying to dump their body heat into the floorboards.
Wow. Which leads Prince on this desperate quest for, cool linoleum.
The holy grail of the boat.
Seriously. Raymond says the dog looks like he's just lying there waiting for air conditioning to be fitted.
Which is never happening on that boat.
Never. But Prince manages to find the absolute coolest spot on the entire boat. And of course, because of the cruel irony of physics, That spot happens to be right in the exact dead center of the floor.
It's always in the way.
Always. Mandy says he has essentially become a furry speed bump.
Okay, we really need to contextualize the spatial dynamics of this for the listener.
Yeah, paint the picture. How small are we talking?
Well, a standard British narrowboat is legally constrained by the width of the historical lock systems on the canals.
Right, because they have to fit through those old stone locks.
Exactly. So they're typically only about 6 feet 10 inches wide on the exterior.
Less than 7 feet on the outside.
Yes. And once you factor in the steel hull, the internal insulation, and, the cabinetry and furniture.
The space shrinks pretty fast.
Very fast. The central corridor you walk down is remarkably narrow. Sometimes it's barely 2 feet wide.
2 feet. So you literally cannot just politely step around a medium to large dog who has gone into full starfish mode on the floor.
You cannot. When a dog decides that the exact center of that microscopic hallway is his permanent, non-negotiable survival zone, it completely shatters the flow of the household.
It becomes an obstacle course.
Every single trip to the kitchen for water, every trip to the bathroom, it requires this awkward, straddling gymnastics routine over a heavily panting animal.
And you're trying not to step on paws while you're already sweating profusely.
Right, and you don't want to disturb him because he's miserable.
It just adds an intense layer of claustrophobia to the whole thing.
It really does.
Like you're already trapped inside this broiler, the air is thick, and now your basic mobility is completely restricted by your own pet.
You can't even pace around to burn off your anxious energy.
No, you're just trapped.
And that's exactly. And that compounded stress drives the humans to attack increasingly desperate, honestly irrational interventions.
Which brings us back to the oven. You called it the logic of a fever dream earlier.
Yes, the desperate measures.
In the diary, they detail all these futile cooling measures. They run fans, which in 35-degree heat just turns a boat into a convection oven.
Right, you're literally just blowing a hairdryer at your own face at that point.
It's miserable. And they were laying wet towels everywhere. And then Mandy admits that earlier in the day, she opened the kitchen oven, hoping it would cool the room down.
I love this part so much, the thermodynamics of despair.
It's incredible. An unlit metal box designed specifically to trap and radiate intense heat to cook food is technically the coolest object in the room.
It defies basic logic, but it's scientifically true in that moment.
Okay, you have to explain this to me. Why would the inside of an oven be cooler than the kitchen itself?
It all comes down to insulation. Ovens are heavily, heavily insulated. The insulation that normally keeps the 200-degree heat inside when you're baking a roast,
Right.
it is currently working in reverse. It is blocking the 35-degree ambient heat of the boat from penetrating the interior cavity of the appliance.
Oh, wow. So it's protecting the inside from the outside heat.
Exactly. So the air trapped inside that unlit oven is still holding on to the ambient temperature of whatever it was last night or early that morning.
It's like a tiny temporary time capsule of cooler air.
That's a great way to put it, yes.
So Mandy's instinct wasn't actually crazy at all. She was just mining for cool air in the only insulated cave she had left on the boat.
She was being remarkably resourceful, honestly.
And then you look at Prince, securing the one cool spot on the floor and refusing to move. I look at that as the ultimate act of passive resistance.
How do you mean?
Well, he didn't choose the boat life. The boat life chose him, right? And he is enforcing a strict boundary with his environment. He's saying, I'm staying right here.
He is absolutely dictating the terms of his surrender to the heat.
But Mandy has this other strategy that goes beyond the oven. She starts opening every single window, door, and hatch on the boat in this desperate bid for a cross breeze.
Which introduces an entirely new, very chaotic variable into this survival scenario.
Right, because when you eliminate the physical barrier between your home and the outside world, you inevitably invite the outside world inside.
And on a canal in the middle of summer, the outside world is primarily made of one thing.
Bugs. So many bugs. This part of the diary is an absolute masterclass in comedic writing.
It's so funny.
Because they aren't just battling the heat anymore, they are battling a full-scale ecosystem invasion.
It's worth noting here, just for context, that unlike homes in North America, British homes, and by extension, British narrowboats, they rarely feature window screens as a standard amenity.
Wait, really? No screens at all?
Generally, no. The climate historically just hasn't required them. It doesn't get hot enough for long enough to justify the infrastructure for most people.
So when you open the doors to a canal,
You are offering an unfiltered, wide-open invitation to the entire local wetland insect population.
that sounds horrific.
Eh,
But Mandy describes this invasion so brilliantly. She doesn't just complain about the swarm, she elevates the bugs into, like, a functioning human bureaucracy.
I love how she frames this.
She says the flies have officially moved in, the mosquitoes have sent change of address forms,
So good.
the midges have invited their extended family for a holiday, and then Raymond chimes in to say he's convinced one particular dragonfly has started paying council tax.
The escalation of the premise is just wonderful.
It is. I mean, in today's housing market, if a bug is willing to cover the council tax,
Mhm.
I feel like you just hand over the keys and say thank you.
You absolutely take that deal.
But from a psychological standpoint, why do they describe it this way? Like, why invent a civic infrastructure for the insects that are actively eating you alive?
It is a textbook psychological coping mechanism. It's called anthropomorphism.
Anthropomorphism. So, assigning human traits to non-human things.
Exactly. We project human traits, societal norms, and even civic responsibilities onto animals or inanimate objects to make sense of them or to make them less threatening.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because think about it, in a sweltering metal tube, being swarmed by hundreds of biting midges is a terrifying, overwhelming experience. You are entirely helpless against the sheer volume of nature.
Right, you can't swat all of them. You're just part of the food chain at that point.
Precisely. You are the meal. But by shrinking that overwhelming force of nature down into the mundane, everyday annoyances of human administration,
Like change of address forms.
right, or paying taxes, or extended family overstaying their welcome,
Mm.
by doing that, you regain narrative control.
Because we understand those things.
Yes, we understand bureaucracy. We know exactly how to roll our eyes at taxes. We don't know how to emotionally process being eaten alive in our own bed.
So reframing a biological threat as an administrative joke makes the suffering manageable.
You domesticate the monster so it doesn't seem as scary.
That is fascinating. And, they actually extend this anthropomorphism to all the local wildlife on the canal, not just the bugs.
Because the heat wave has broken the spirit of the entire ecosystem.
Nature is suffering right alongside them. Raymond notes that it is dangerously hot when the ducks aren't even bothering to swim.
They've just given up.
They're just floating passively, looking, as he says, completely defeated.
Just bobbing there.
Yeah. And he looks out at the canal and assumes the fish have stopped jumping because they are in the shade somewhere drinking iced tea.
The imagery is fantastic.
But the absolute peak of this is Mandy's interaction with the local swans. She says the swans glided past the boat and looked at them as if to say, quote, "You lot chose this."
The judgment of the swans, which is a really fascinating layer of psychological projection.
Let's explore that. Because swans already carry this haughty, kind of aristocratic reputation in British culture, don't they?
They do. They have a lot of cultural baggage.
Like, they belong to the crown, they glide around looking incredibly elegant, and they always seem like they're just looking down their beaks at you anyway.
Yes, they are the nobility of the canal. But analytically, the swan isn't actually judging Mandy.
Right, obviously.
A swan doesn't understand the concept of a mortgage or boat ownership or lifestyle choices.
It's just a bird trying to stay cool.
Exactly. The swan is simply acting as a blank canvas for Mandy's own internal buyer's remorse.
Ah, wow. So she's projecting her own guilt onto the bird.
Yes. When the environment becomes hostile, humans constantly look for external validation of our internal doubts.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mandy knows deep down that they actively opted into this lifestyle. They weren't assigned this boat, they purchased it. They chose the canal life.
So when she looks at the swan,
She is projecting her own regret right onto the bird. The swan becomes the voice of her conscience saying, "You can't blame anyone else for this misery. You chose this."
which is a heavy, heavy psychological burden to carry when you are already sweating through your clothes and getting bitten by midges.
It adds an emotional weight to the physical discomfort.
And if you are projecting your regret onto the waterfowl, how are you treating the actual person trapped in the tin tube with you?
The domestic tension must have been off the charts.
Because while Mandy is leaning heavily into hyperbole and humor to vent her frustration, Raymond takes a completely different psychological off-ramp.
He chooses outright denial.
It is a spectacular display of stubbornness. I mean, the thermometer's at 35 degrees, the dog is immobilized, the bugs are filing tax returns,
Everything is falling apart.
and Raymond just stands there insisting, quote, "It's not that hot."
Oh, Raymond.
Mandy literally asks him why he keeps saying that, and his response is simply, "Because I'm tough."
It really highlights a very fragile form of machismo, doesn't it?
It really does. Like, why pretend?
Well, There is this deeply ingrained idea in many cultures that admitting physical discomfort, especially to something as mundane as the weather, is somehow a moral failing.
As if acknowledging the heat makes you less of a man or less capable.
Exactly. But nature does not care how tough you are.
Thermodynamics is undefeated.
Always. And Raymond's toughness crumbles almost immediately. But because he has painted himself into this macho corner, he can't just admit defeat and lie down in front of the fan with the dog.
Right, you can't say, you were right, I'm dying.
No, he has to invent a cover story.
The towpath ruse.
Yes! I love the towpath ruse.
He announces, in this very serious, utilitarian, captain of the ship voice, I'm just popping outside to check the ropes.
Very important boat business.
Very important. But Mandy, who has clearly been with him long enough to translate Raymond's speak, knows exactly what is happening.
She sees right through it.
She knows checking the ropes actually translates to, I am going to go lie completely flat on the dirt of the towpath because the earth is fractionally cooler than the steel of this boat.
This is such a classic face-saving maneuver.
It's brilliant, really.
He physically needs the relief of the cooler ground outside. His core temperature is probably rising. His body is demanding relief.
But his ego won't let him say that.
Exactly. His ego refuses to let him say, I am overwhelmed by the heat. So he invents a responsible boat owner task.
Because checking the mooring ropes is a valid chore.
It's a necessary chore. It allows him to exit the hot environment while preserving his self-image as the stoic captain maintaining his vessel.
Think about your own version of the towpath ruse, you know? Like, anyone listening to this right now, what is the fake chore you invent when you just need 5 minutes of air conditioning in your car during a stressful family gathering?
Oh, absolutely. I just need to go grab something from the trunk.
Or just need to go check the oil in the driveway. We all do it.
We invent a socially acceptable reason to seek comfort so we don't look weak or overwhelmed.
But Raymond's commitment to denial culminates in what has to be the most absurd domestic standoff in the entire diary. We have to talk about the tea incident.
It is a defining cultural moment, truly.
Okay, picture the scene. It is 35 degrees Celsius inside Satan's conservatory.
The easy bake oven.
The dog is a furry speed bump. The ducks are surrendering. And Raymond decides, in his infinite tough guy wisdom, that what his body really needs in this exact moment is to boil the kettle and make a piping hot cup of tea.
It defies all logic.
Mandy watches him do this, calmly picks up a water hose, and sprays him down.
She claims it was accidental, of course.
But Raymond correctly points out that she, quote, aimed it.
Hard to accidentally aim a hose.
Right. And Mandy's defense is simply, you were overheating. To which Raymond indignantly yells back, I was making a cup of tea.
The indignation is palpable.
I just need to push back on the sheer insanity of this logic for a second, because I have never understood this. Why is a boiling hot beverage the default response to a heat wave?
It's a great question.
Mandy asks the same thing. Who drinks tea in this weather? And Raymond's defense is British people. It's probably in the Constitution.
It is a baffling contradiction if you only look at it through the lens of thermal regulation.
Because it just adds heat to your body.
Well, physiologically, there is a tiny, tiny kernel of truth to hot drinks cooling you down.
Wait, really? How?
Drinking hot tea can induce a rapid sweat response. And if that sweat evaporates efficiently, it can theoretically lower your core temperature.
But they are inside a humid metal tube by a stagnant canal. The sweat isn't going to evaporate, it's just going to make them stickier.
Exactly. The physics do not support the action in this highly specific, enclosed environment.
So why do it?
Which means we have to look at the psychology of it. When the world around you becomes hostile and unrecognizable, when your food is melting, the bugs are moving in, and your house feels like a weapon, human beings instinctively grasp for foundational cultural anchors.
Okay, so the tea has nothing to do with thirst at all. It's an anchor.
It is a behavioral return to homeostasis.
Yeah.
In British culture, putting the kettle on is the universal panacea for everything.
It's the answer to all of life's problems.
Literally. You receive bad news. Make tea. You receive good news. Make tea. You are surviving a life-threatening heat wave on a metal barge. You put the kettle on.
The routine of it brings comfort.
Yes. The sequence of actions, filling the kettle, waiting for the boil, steeping the bag, it represents order, civilization, and normality.
It's a ritual.
Raymond is making tea because the act of making tea allows him to pretend, just for 3 minutes, that his world is still under his control.
He is aggressively asserting normality in the face of chaos. which honestly makes Mandy's reaction with the water hose so brilliant.
It's the perfect countermove.
She isn't just cooling his core temperature down. She is actively disrupting his psychological denial
She is weaponizing the hose to shatter the illusion of his tea break.
and bringing him violently back to their shared sweaty reality like, snap out of it, Raymond. We are melting.
She's forcing him to acknowledge the severity of their environment. You can't pretend everything is normal when you're dripping wet.
It's just peak domestic comedy. But, making tea requires supplies. You need milk, maybe a biscuit, and that naturally transitions the diary into the state of their provisions.
Things get a bit grim in the pantry.
Because while the humans are fighting over the kettle, their food supply is rapidly degrading into like a surrealist art installation.
The state change of their groceries is a fascinating metric of the heat inside the boat.
Mandy's list of ruined food is tragic, but her delivery is just perfect. She starts by noting they nearly cooked breakfast on the roof that morning.
Not in the kitchen, on the roof.
Right. They didn't turn on the gas stove inside because they just couldn't bear to generate any more internal heat. So they put a frying pan directly onto the painted steel roof of the boat and let the sun do the work.
Which again confirms the immense thermal mass we discussed earlier.
The boat is just absorbing so much energy.
The ability to fry an egg or heat a pan using only the ambient solar radiation absorbed by the hull. That is a stark physical demonstration of why they are so miserable inside.
It really puts the tin oven metaphor into perspective. But inside, the provisions are actively rebelling. Mandy casually mentions that the butter has, quote, become milk again.
It's just regressing down the dairy timeline.
Exactly. The chocolate bars have turned into a drink. And then she delivers this incredible line. The cheese has started negotiating its own independence.
It is another sublime use of anthropomorphism, but this time they are elevating spoiled dairy to the level of geopolitics.
I can just picture this block of sharp cheddar sweating profusely in a Tupperware container, forming a sovereign nation on the galley counter.
Drafting a constitution.
Right, demanding UN recognition.
Yeah.
It is such a wonderfully absurd way to describe a block of cheese melting into a puddle of oil.
But notice the specific function of the humor here.
What do you mean?
Well, having your groceries spoil is actually a significant stressor. It's a waste of money. It limits your food options in a space where you can't easily cook. And it means you have to travel in the extreme heat to restock.
It's a huge inconvenience.
It should be a cause for an argument, or at least genuine despair.
But instead, they joke about it.
By phrasing the melting cheese as a geopolitical crisis, Mandy completely diffuses the tension. She turns a domestic failure into a shared joke.
The humor acts as a pressure release valve.
Exactly. It releases the anxiety of diminishing resources.
It's brilliant. They're laughing at the cheese so they don't scream at each other.
Which is a very healthy survival tactic.
But that shared joke is strictly an internal coping mechanism, because the diary then details their interactions with the outside world, and the contrast is just jarring.
The public versus private face of canal living.
Inside the boat, the cheese is seceding from the union, and they are attacking each other with garden hoses. But outside the boat, they're performing this rigid societal play.
The polite facade of the canals. This is perhaps the most astute sociological observation in the entire script.
Raymond actually notes the phenomenon first. He points out that every single time another boat passes them on the canal, the occupants of both vessels are expected to make eye contact, smile widely, and cheerfully call out lovely weather.
It is the mandated acknowledgement of sunshine. It's compulsory in Britain.
Yes. You have to praise the sun no matter what. But Mandy's internal monologue reveals the absolute horror hiding behind the smile.
She hates it.
She doesn't see these greetings as polite canal camaraderie. She views them as a literal hostage situation.
A hostage situation. That's so extreme, but so accurate.
She writes that every time she smiles and waves at a passing boater, she desperately wants to shout across the water, "Blink twice if you need rescuing."
This is a perfect textbook example of what sociologists call pluralistic ignorance.
Pluralistic ignorance. Okay, wait, explain that. How does that work on the canal?
Pluralistic ignorance is a situation where a majority of group members privately reject a norm, but they incorrectly assume that most others accept it and therefore they go along with it.
Okay, so apply that to Mandy and the passing boats.
Right. So Mandy privately rejects the idea that this weather is lovely. She is miserable. She knows she's miserable.
The dog is a speed bump. The cheese is soup.
Exactly. But when she looks at the passing boat, she sees them smiling and waving, so she assumes they are genuinely enjoying the heat wave.
She thinks they're having a great time.
Yes. And to avoid being the social outlier, to avoid being the miserable complainer on the canal, she mimics their behavior and smiles back.
Faking it.
Faking it. But what she doesn't realize is that the people on the other boat are likely enduring the exact same internal oven, the exact same melting cheese, and the exact same paralyzed dog.
So they're faking it too.
Yes. They are only smiling because they think Mandy expects them to.
Wow. So they're all trapped in this collective delusion.
Mutually assured politeness.
They're all dying in their respective tin cans, but they absolutely refuse to break the social contract.
Because breaking that polite facade requires acknowledging the reality of the trauma to an outsider.
It's one thing to admit it to your partner, but to a stranger.
Exactly. If you shout, "I'm miserable, my dog is melting, my husband is delusional," you shatter the illusion of control.
You lose the narrative.
You go from being a stoic, adventurous captain enjoying the summer to a victim of your own poor lifestyle choices.
And nobody wants to be the victim of their own choices.
The hostage situation metaphor Mandy uses is profoundly accurate, but the twist is that the hostage taker isn't the other boater.
Who is it?
It's their own commitment to maintaining appearances. They are holding themselves hostage.
We are held hostage by our own pride. That is so deeply, weirdly human.
We will suffer to save face.
We will literally suffer in silence, just to avoid making a stranger uncomfortable for 5 seconds as they float past.
It's the ultimate British social reflex.
Which inevitably brings us to the core mystery of this entire deep dive, the ultimate why.
Yes, the justification for all of this misery.
Exactly. Because we've spent this time breaking down the melting food, the hostage situation greetings, the suffocating physics of the hull, the aggressive swans, and the insect bureaucracy.
It's quite a list of grievances.
When you lay it all out like a balance sheet, the trade-off just seems insane.
It really does.
On the negative side of the ledger, you have inescapable sweat, severe sunburn, hostile bugs, and surviving on what Mandy describes as a diet of, quote, endless ice lollies.
Popsicles for dinner, it sounds like a punishment.
It sounds awful. Who would want this? But then, at the very end of the diary, Mandy drops her final verdict.
The big reveal.
After all the hyperbole about Satan's conservatory, she reveals her bottom line. She writes that she would still choose this every sweaty, chaotic, bug-filled second of it over city and commuter traffic every day.
Which is a profound statement on modern life.
She calls the lifestyle beautiful, ridiculous, sweaty, and declares that they absolutely love it.
And even Raymond drops the tough guy act for a second to agree with her.
He does. He simply says same.
Yeah.
Although he does append a very realistic caveat to that.
He says, well, maybe ask me again in August.
That August caveat is the most relatable thing he says in the whole diary.
July heat is novel. August heat breaks your spirit.
It truly does. But I want to linger on this incredible trade-off they've presented to us. It feels like such a strange facet of human nature.
It speaks to what we value most.
Right. We will willingly subject ourselves to 35-degree tin can living. We will fight off mosquitoes who are paying council tax. We will straddle our upside-down dogs in a 2-foot hallway, and we will eat sovereign cheese. All just to avoid a morning commute.
It seems completely illogical until you analyze the underlying neurochemistry of how humans process stress.
Oh, neurochemistry. Okay, break this down for me.
I think this is the most crucial insight we can pull from their entire diary. This isn't just a funny recount of hot weather, it's a modern manifesto on the concept of choosing your own hard.
Choosing your own hard. I love that framing.
That's everything.
Compare the two scenarios for me then. Why does the human brain accept the melting boat but completely reject the traffic?
It all comes down to autonomy and agency.
Having control.
Exactly. Modern life guarantees that you will experience discomfort. It's unavoidable. But usually, modern discomfort is involuntary.
Like traffic.
Yes. Sitting in endless bumper-to-bumper traffic on a gray motorway to get to a job, that is an involuntary, soul-crushing hardship.
You didn't choose the traffic. It is inflicted upon you by the structural necessities of the economy.
Right. You have absolutely zero control over the speed of the cars in front of you. And that lack of agency, that feeling of being trapped by a system, it spikes your cortisol and breeds deep resentment.
You're trapped in a different kind of metal box, but one that's just slowly inching toward a cubicle under fluorescent light.
Exactly. It's a box of obligation. Now, compare that to the canal boat.
Okay.
Living on a narrowboat during a record-breaking heat wave is incredibly hard. Physically, it is punishing.
As we've extensively documented.
Right. But it is a chosen hardship. Mandy and Raymond made a deliberate, active financial choice to step away from the traditional temperature-controlled commuting lifestyle.
They opted in.
Because they chose the hardship, their brains process the stress completely differently.
So the autonomy changes the chemical response.
Yes. When you choose the mountain, the pain of the climb is processed as an adventure or an achievement. When you don't choose the pain, it is processed as a punishment.
Wow. That completely shifts the perspective on everything we've talked about today.
It reframes the entire diary.
The heat, the bugs, the hose incidents, they aren't punishments at all. They are just the price of admission for freedom.
Because they own the misery, it essentially stops being miserable.
It becomes a badge of honor. It becomes a story they get to tell, a diary they get to write.
The autonomy is everything. It is what gives Mandy the power to look at that flock of judgmental swans and say, yes, we did choose this, and we prefer our messy, melting reality over your pristine, predictable alternative.
That is a brilliant way to view it. They are the captains of their own chaos.
Exactly.
Well, as we start to tie off the ropes and pull our own boat into the moorings here, let's take a quick look back at the wild journey Mandy, Raymond, and Prince took us on today.
It has been a ride.
We started with the rapid evaporation of the hashtag van life pastoral dream, which was instantly replaced by the thermodynamic reality of a floating, double-sided broiler.
We charted the biology of canine heat regulation, witnessing Prince transform into a highly strategic, furry speed bump in the exact center of a 2-foot corridor.
And we marveled at the physics of opening an unlit oven to mine for cold air.
The thermodynamics of despair.
We analyzed the psychological coping mechanism of anthropomorphism, shrinking the overwhelming terror of an insect invasion into the mundane annoyance of dragonflies paying council tax.
We watched Raymond's fragile ego invent the towpath ruse, just so he could lie in the dirt.
Leading to the ultimate cultural clash, weaponizing a water hose to stop a man from aggressively making boiling hot tea in 35-degree weather.
We observed the state change of groceries, where cheese demands diplomatic recognition.
And we uncovered the pluralistic ignorance of the Canal, where everyone is just smiling through a sofa hostage situation.
And through it all, they used sarcasm and wit to not just survive the heat, but to truly claim ownership of it.
It's an incredible documentation of resilience through humor.
It really is.
Now, taking a page from their diary, I want to turn the question over to you listening right now.
Yes, let's hear from the audience.
We want to know, what is the absolutely hottest, most oppressive, sweat-inducing environment you have ever willingly tried to sleep in?
Willingly being the key word.
Right. Was it a broken-down car in Nevada? A poorly planned camping trip in August? And crucially, do you have any tips for maintaining your sanity and keeping cool that don't involve spraying your significant other with a garden hose?
Because, as Raymond pointed out, that is not a sustainable conflict resolution strategy.
It really isn't. And as you reflect on your own sweltering memories, I want to leave you with one final, perhaps slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, what is it?
Well, we've spent this hour analyzing the comedy and absurdity of Mandy and Raymond's struggle. But consider the trajectory of our modern world. As society engineers increasingly perfect climate control, as we move seamlessly from air-conditioned homes to air-conditioned cars to air-conditioned offices, what internal muscles are we letting atrophy?
That is a great question.
If you remove all of the friction, all of the temperature variations, all of the chosen hardships, do we actually become less resilient, less creative versions of ourselves?
That's fascinating to think about.
Does perfect, unbroken physical comfort rob us of the brilliant absurdity of survival? Because without the 35-degree heat trapped in a metal tube, Mandy and Raymond wouldn't have the camaraderie of the hose incident.
They wouldn't have the shared inside joke of the bureaucratic buzz.
They wouldn't have been forced to realize just how deeply they value their chaotic freedom over an easy commute.
Sometimes the physical struggle is exactly what is required to create a life worth writing about.
So the next time you find yourself stuck in a room so hot, you are genuinely tempted to open the oven just to feel a breeze, try to reframe the misery.
Right.
Remember, you aren't suffering, you are just gathering excellent material.
I love that.
Thank you for joining us on this sweaty, sarcastic, and hopefully illuminating deep dive. Stay cool, keep a very close eye on your cheese, and we'll catch you next time.